Hello, everyone. Today is Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. My name is DeAna L., and I am a recovered Al-Anon and will be leading this meeting. We want to welcome everyone to our Al-Anon Big Book Recovery meeting. This is a step speaker meeting that meets every Wednesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will study the 12 steps by using the precise instructions out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as they relate to us as Al-Anon. So let's get our meeting started. This is the original AA preamble written by the AA Grapevine, describing the fellowship in 1940. We studied the preamble with an open mind and an open heart to consider how it applies to Al-Anon. This helps us to stay focused on the message of recovery the pioneers intended while observing the traditions in action. Through the actions taken, based on the instructions of the basic text, we comprehend what the pioneers meant when they described the membership of AA, which is that they worked a program of recovery and they no longer drank, or in our case, we no longer obsessed over the alcoholic. Through the continuous action and study of these principles, the understanding of the value and of the original preamble reveals itself. We ask for your humble consideration of our sincere admiration of the pioneers of Alcoholics Anonymous. The simple hope is that we of Al-Anon will grow into the same clarity and unity that birthed the original 12-step fellowship, because without them, after all, none of us would be here. So I'm going to read now the original AA preamble, as we are gathered here because we are faced with the fact that we are powerless over alcohol and unable to do anything about it without the help of a power greater than ourselves. We feel that each person's religious views, if any, are his own affair. The simple purpose of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to show what may be done to enlist the aid of a power greater than ourselves, regardless of what our individual conception of that power may be. In order to form a habit of depending upon and referring all we do to that power, we must first apply ourselves to some diligence. By often repeating these acts, they become habitual, and the help rendered becomes natural. We have come to know that as alcoholics, we suffer from a serious disease, for which medicine has no cure. Our condition may be the result of an allergy, which makes us different from other people. It has never been permanently cured by any treatment with which we are familiar. The only relief we have to offer is absolute abstinence, the second meaning of AA. There are no dues or fees. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Each member squares his debt by helping others to recover. An Alcoholics Anonymous member is an alcoholic who, through the application of and adherence to the AA program, has forsworn the use of any alcoholic beverages in any form. Any and all alcoholic beverages in any form. The moment he takes so much as one drop of beer, wine, spirits, or any other liquid containing alcohol, he automatically loses all status as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is not interested in sobering up drunks who are not sincere in their desire to stay sober for all time. Not being reformers, we offer our experience only to those who want it. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and on which we can join in harmonious action. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our program. Those who do not recover are people who will not or simply cannot give themselves to this simple program. Now you may like our program or you may not, but the simple fact remains that it works. And we believe is our only chance to recover. There is a vast amount of fun included in the AA fellowship. Some people might be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath there lies a deadly earnestness and a full realization that we must put first things first with each of us. The first thing is the solution to our alcoholic problem. To drink is to die. Faith must work 24 hours a day in and through us or we perish. In order to set our tone for this meeting, I ask that we bow our heads in a few moments of silent prayer and meditation, followed by the serenity prayer. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. I wish to remind you that whatever is said at this meeting expresses our own individual opinion as of today and as of up to this moment. We do not speak for AA as a whole, and you are free to agree or disagree as you see fit. In fact, it is suggested that you pay no attention to anything which might not be reconciled with what is in the AA Big. If you don't have a big book, it's time you bought one. Read it, study it, live with it, follow the directions in it, and learn what it means to be an AA. A sponsor is anyone who's had a psychic change as a result of working the steps and has the willingness to work with others. For those looking for a sponsor to guide them through the steps, please stay tuned and have your pens ready to record phone numbers immediately after the meeting. Each Al-Anon group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the Al-Anon who still suffers. This is our primary spiritual aim. Our job as a group is to provide people with a place to learn about and work the steps. It has been our experience that working the steps consistently provides us with a better, sooner life. We consider all else to be an outside issue. This includes personal problems. The proper venue for sharing such problems is with a sponsor. This is, after all, where real recovery takes place, in working the steps with a sponsor. And we are just so glad we are all here, and we are all here because we're not all there. There will be a period of fellowship after the meeting. If you have questions, if you need a sponsor, if you need to check in or get current, or if you want to discuss other literature, please stick around for the fellowship. That would be a better time for these subjects. Okay, so this week we are going to be covering steps 4 through 7. So each Wednesday of this month we're covering a different series of steps. Last week I covered steps 1 through 3, but I am going to review those steps because it's important, for us to. It's a good lead-in to steps. I think I'm going to try to cover. Actually, I'm going to try to get through steps 4 to 6 today. But I think going through steps 1 through 3 will provide a good base for that. So we will cover those steps 4 through 6. I'm hoping to get through. We'll get to 7 if we can, but we're going to start with steps 1 through 3 just to have a good base. So, as I mentioned, I am using the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to reference pages and Roman numerals and such. And if you want to follow along, you're welcome to do that. if you don't have a big book and you would like to follow along, there's a free version, a free PDF online that you can access on aa.org. And when I reference page numbers and such, this is from the 4th edition. That's important to know because if you have a different edition, the pages may be a little different. Okay. So, again, providing a good base for this. So we're going to touch on steps 1 through 3 first, and then we're going to get into other steps there. But the title page says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And right off the bat, they're giving us a promise. We're getting a lot of hope here, because when this book was written, there really was no, widespread available known solution for alcoholism. I mean, it was a bleak and dire, but right away we're getting a promise here. And we ourselves could get recovered as Al-Anon. If you're new and you're wondering, why would we be studying literature that's written for alcoholics when we ourselves have, an Al-Anon? I mean, that's a fair question. Reason being is, we obsess about the alcoholics as Al-Anons, and we need to understand the disease of alcoholism. That's going to help us in our own recovery program. So we need to learn the disease of our, what our loved ones are through. And also we're going to study this to better understand our own obsession of the mind, over the alcoholic. And, learn a little bit more about why they do what they do, and the program that they need to work, and ultimately it's the program we need to work as well. So, yeah, first sentence is telling us we can get recovered, and we get a lot of hope from that because it's in past tense. It's not saying we're recovering, ing, we hope to recover, gee, it'd be nice. That's, there's nothing like that at all. We can get recovered. That's the great thing about this. And when they talk about recovered, what are they getting at there? It means that, that all that ruminating, focusing and obsessing, in our mind about the alcoholic, what they're doing, not doing, how our life would be better or different if they were just a certain way, we can get peace and sanity in our lives by working this program. So our happiness, our peace, our sanity does not hinge on what another is doing any longer, which, is pretty darn miraculous. And what a great way to live, because ultimately we can't control others, but we have minds that just keep wanting to take us back to thinking we can't. So we get freedom, we get peace if we work this program, and that is very different than a lot of us have lived. And many of us, weren't even sure we could ever get to a place like this, but it is possible. So again, we get a lot of hope just from that first sentence in on the title page, that we can get, recovered as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to the preface, and this is on this is Roman numeral XI or Roman numeral 11, and it says, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. So, they're referring to this as a textbook, which means we are going to read it, we're going to study it, because we need to understand what's in it. We need to understand the steps. we as Al-Anons didn't understand the illness of alcoholism. We thought perhaps that it was a problem of willpower, or if only they loved us enough, or if only they would just, do X, Y, Z. But, that's not the problem. The problem is much deeper than that. And so we need to understand the illness of our loved one, or friend or whatnot, whoever's afflicted with it. We need to better understand. So that's why we study this book. And we not only study it, but we're gonna practice what's in it. We practice these principles. We live it. Oh, it's not a theory. So yeah, it's a program of action. So, now it is a bit, they call it a textbook, and it is quite large. If you look at it, I mean, there are a lot of pages in here. When we're talking about the program of recovery, the plan of action, that is contained within the first 164 pages. And as a textbook, think about, a math textbook you used in grade school. If you flip through it like a novel, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. There's no, you don't have the content, The big book is laid out in a way where you do really need to read it in sequence. You do really need to understand, because it's laid out where it talks about the problem first, then the solution, and the plan of action. You don't just want to jump ahead because it's not going to make it. So it's laid out in a way where, if we read it in sequence, it's going to make a lot more sense. Towards the back of the book, they do have personal stories. Okay. And that is not part of the program of action, but it does serve a purpose. Those personal stories are meant, or, for people, if they read, it's there to help them identify, to help them maybe say, yeah, that sounds like me. That kind of thing. So, now us as Al-Anon, we, it's part of our 12-step work. We go out in our communities, and, we get on meetings and we share our own story. And that's what we're meant to do as well, so that others can identify and perhaps, again, hear themselves in our story. And then, the idea, at least in the big book, was to have those personal stories in the back so that people would then turn back to the first 164 pages and then, work the program of action. So we're going to move on to the forward of the first edition. This is Roman numeral XIII, or 13, Roman numeral 13. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic, as many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we're sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, they're telling us what the problem is. So the alcoholic has a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, a two-part problem. We have a seemingly hopeless state of mind as chronic Al-Anon. So we don't have the body component, but we do, what we share in common with the alcoholic is this obsession of the mind. Okay. They use that word again, recovered. Okay. So again, we're getting a lot of hope here. They mentioned that this way of living has its advantages for all. So when you read that, there are over 200 fellowships that use the program of recovery contained in the first 164 pages the 12 steps to get free from their problem. Everything from, spending to sex addiction, gambling, eating, and as ourselves, Al-Anon. Al-Anon was, originates from the AA program. So this basic text, that's just a testament to how powerful this textbook is, this plan of action. So step one is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. We have to understand what our problem is in order to apply the right solution. So that's really, really key. And in fact, we actually take our step one before we even come into the rooms, before we even come into Al-Anon. It's all the trying what we think will work to keep our minds, focused elsewhere, and then, failing at it before the chronic variety. Moving on to the doctor's opinion, this is Roman numeral XXVIII, or Roman numeral 28. It says here, we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. When it says the doctor's opinion, this is Dr. William Silkworth, and he had experience, helping people sober up from alcohol. But he noticed a pattern. There was a certain type of person that would say, you know what, I need to get sobered up. They would, go through his treatments, they would swear off. But then, shortly after, they're hitting the drinking. They're getting drunk. And, but they just gone through all that treatment and made all those, resolutions. And he referred to this type as the chronic variety. Okay. So, and he's talking about, the body component for the alcoholic, when he talks about the allergy. So it's important for us as Al-Anons to understand that alcoholics do have not only an addiction to alcohol, a substance, but they have a chemical reaction. They don't process alcohol the way others do. They react abnormally to it. So when you think about an allergy, like, somebody had a peanut allergy, or, they had bee sting, and, it's a severe reaction. It's not normal. That's what they have to the substance of alcohol. Okay. Again, us as Al-Anons, we don't have that body component. What we have is an obsession of the mind, and our obsession goes back to we think we know best. It always settles on we think we know best, and we go back to wanting to control the alcoholic, we want to keep tabs on them. We want to, manage their life and, tell them what we think is best, and that can look like a lot of different things, how we can be overbearing and such on them. We may be nagging them a lot. Oh, are you going to are you working your program and such, or, checking up on them, in different ways. So, and what our mind tells us is that if they do these things that we think they should do, then we're going to have peace in the home. Our lives are going to be good. Our lives are going to look like the way we want. So we have an obsession and that we want to control others, particularly alcoholics. And for many of us, it isn't just alcoholics. We want to control non-alcoholics as well, a lot of us, but, or other areas of our lives. It could, even, impact, going to work or, just, we want to be, the puppeteer, if you will, from the show. So that's not that unusual. They go on to talk about frothy emotional appeal, seldom suffices. This is still on Roman numeral 28. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power of themselves if they are to recreate their life. So frothy emotional appeal, those are the things that we try that people say, hey, this worked for me. So if someone says, hey, I just found this great spa and I'm doing all this self-care, or I'm picking up these hobbies and, I'm just, I'm not even focused on the alcoholic. I'm doing all these distraction things and keeping my mind busy. Those things work for a lot of people. But for the chronic Al-Anon, when we try to do those things, and it may work for a time, we're not going to be able to stick to it. That word frothy, think of froth like something on the top of a cappuccino. You can blow it off real easy. Okay, that's what frothy emotional appeal is. What we need is something deeper, something more meaningful to us. We're going to need a message of depth and weight, and that's only going to come from another person that's been relieved that, which would be a recovered Al. That's what we need, and that's who we're going to listen to. That's why, when we ourselves as Al-Anons, when people would try to tell us, hey, just avoid blah, 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 cut them out of your life, or, try all these things, it just doesn't work for us, because they haven't been where we've been. They don't know what it's like. That last part that I read, it says, recreating their lives. Okay, so recreating our lives is getting into, what that's referring to is that, if we're really sick in our illness, then we're going to need to be open to new ideas and try new things, work in this program. And what we're doing isn't working, so are we willing to try something different? And so our ideals are going to have to be grounded in this program, and we're going to have to rely on a power greater than ourselves. It goes on to say, men and women drink essentially because they like the effects produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the truth from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontent unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of its recovery. Now, for us as chronic Al-Anons, we might also say, draw a line in the sand and say, that's it. Not going to do this anymore. I'm causing myself stress ulcers. I'm acting crazy. That's it. I am just not going to check up on the alcoholic in my life. They've got their own life to live. I just need to mind my own business. we may say those things, and we often really want to stick to that because we see that we're just in this spiral here. And the baffling feature of this is that we can do that for a while, okay? But it's kind of like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while, but after a while it becomes a struggle and we start to white knuckle. So maybe we're not acting out and nagging and being verbal about it, but we're going to start to upset at some point. Like, oh man, they're not doing what I want, or oh, I think they're drinking. We're going to start that whole, obsessing piece, and then it just takes on a life of its own. We're not going to be able to hold ourselves back. Okay, so it's like holding that beach ball underwater. Then it becomes a struggle. And then that ball just flies out of the water full force. We're like, holy crap, where'd that come from? And then we act out, we lash out, we do the thing we said we weren't going to do. And then, it's kind of like, what in the heck? So we can't stick to those resolutions. We're on this hamster wheel, and then we start to cycle all over again. Let's see, it says, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Okay. By rules, they mean the 12 steps. And they're simple. That's the good thing. We don't have to figure anything out. It does say in the book they're simple but not easy. If we are, faced with a life of misery and we're just like, hey, what we're doing isn't working, then the not easy part still seems easier than what we're living through, we're going to have to take action here. This is not a program of wish and want and somehow by osmosis we're going to get well, and it's not a program of just show up to meetings, listen to people speak, and sit on our hands. We're going to have to actually put one foot in front of the other to take action. But it's simple, people have gone before us, the authors, they're showing us what we need to do to get well. Page 23. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. It centers in his mind rather than his body. Okay. Before we ever engage in a behavior, we have a thought, and that's what happens with the alcoholic. That's why just getting the alcohol out of the environment or keeping them doing what we think to keep them away from alcohol, that doesn't work. Their mind's going to take them back to it as a solution. Again, the alcoholic has a two-part illness, mind and body. We as Al-Anons, we have the mental component. That is our problem, how we think. And we think like the alcoholic drinks. We think like the alcoholic drinks. The alcoholic picks up a drink. They want more and more and more. They're on to the fourth drink. They want the fourth drink more than they wanted the first. We pick up a thought, and we may think, don't want to be thinking that, but we can't stop it. It's going to take momentum. It's going to grow. It's going to turn into a big old, forceful thing that we then, move forward with and, we take action on. Moving on, it says, page 24. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation. If even a week or a month ago, we were without defense against the first drink. So, being without the power of choice, so if that's an alcoholic, we may have loved ones that have said, you know what, I'm cutting back, or I'm not going to do this anymore. Just not going to drink, the consequences are too great. And they may be able to do it for a while, and it may seem like things are going well. We're all, proud of them, whatever, but, the thing is, even though the alcoholic may know there's all these consequences, maybe they made lots of promises, and they may really not want to go back to the drink, they're going to pick it up again and do it again. So that's so important that we understand that the alcoholic has lost the power of choice. Okay. That's why things that we try to do to control the environment and whatnot, it doesn't work. It's like it's their default setting. If they're chronic, they're true alcoholics, their mind's gonna tell them, all the reasons they need to pick up again. They blank out on the reasons, on what alcohol is gonna do to them. They blank out on the consequences. And their mind, it's like this carrot that gets dangled in front of them. Their mind tells them all the things that alcohol is going to do for them, and that's just kind of what the focus is. So even if they don't want to do it, they pick up again. And then we as Al-Anons, we obsess over the alcohol. That's where we've lost the power of choice and not being able to do that. Okay? We've lost the power of choice on whether or not we're going to think about the alcoholic. So we can't stop thinking about them for good and all. Maybe we can stop for a while, but we can't stop, for good and all, and we just keep going back to it. And once we start to think about them, again, I mentioned earlier, we think like the alcoholic drinks, we lose control. We can't moderate it or modify it, and keep it in check. If things like therapy and, relationship or personal coaching or those things work for us, then we wouldn't need the program. That's some of the things we try in step one. If you've ever sworn off and said, hey, they're an adult. I'm not going to treat them like they're some kind of child. I'm not going to check up on them. And you really mean it, and you really know it's the right thing to do, but you can't stick to it. You go back to it. That's what they're getting at here when this, and so I'm going to read this next part, because page 24, so when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he's probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been conferred by legions of alcoholics throughout history. So, for an alcoholic, basically, if they cross the threshold, where they're the chronic variety, it's like there's no chance that they're ever going to be a normal. Okay? And they're going to have this problem, this illness, for the rest of their lives. It's chronic. Okay? And that same analogy of crossing a threshold and not being, a normal, for them, drinker, for us, thinker, not being a normal thinker would be what it's like for us as Al-Anon. Meaning, we have friends and family that are just like, hey, I know so-and-so that, is an alcoholic in their life, and they did XYZ program and, or solution or, talk or book, and now they have a lot of peace in their life. It's not going to work for us. Those are called human aid measures. and that's what differentiates the chronic from the non-chronic. Um, so, and then sometimes people will think, well, you know what the answer will be, what will bring us peace is if we just cut the alcoholic out of our lives, or if they just stop drinking. Then, and our mind conjures up these beautiful ideas of what life is going to look like. Oh, then it's going to be peaceful. Then we won't be embarrassed when we have people over or go out with them, or just maybe, like I said, not have them in our lives so we don't have to think about them. That doesn't work for us either as Al-Anon. It may for a little while, it may appear like it, but we're going to go back to trying to control people and things in our life, whether it's at work. We're going back to controlling the alcoholic again, in particular. That control is gonna show up because we can't not do it. So the steps are found on page 59 to 60. And, so step one again is we admit we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. And, for us, we're powerless over the alcoholic, which might surprise some people. Well, I guess let me back up. We as Al-Anons are powerless over alcohol, which might surprise people. And the reason why we're powerless over alcohol is because we obsess about the alcoholic who obsesses about alcohol, right? So we're powerless over alcohol and what it does to the alcoholic. And we're powerless over the alcoholic, and our lives have become unmanageable. And the unmanageability means, we're trying to control all the stuff around us, and it's just not working. So we have to be, done with all that in step one. Step two is and again, step John 59:60, came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So page 25, if you're seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there's no middle of the road solution. We're in a position where life is becoming impossible, and if we passed into the region from which there's no return for human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. So, we as Al-Anons, we tend to drive ourselves and the people around us pretty bonkers, with this obsessing and trying to manage and control. And we need to work the steps, and we need to work them in order. As Al-Anons, oftentimes we think we know best, but we don't get to pick and choose in this program to say, I'm going to work this way and not do that way. We're going to have to work these steps completely and thoroughly. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead here. Let's see. It says, page 47, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there's a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe, or is willing to believe, we emphatically he's on his way. It's been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spirit can be built. So step two is simply, do I believe there's a power greater than me out there? And do I have hope that what worked for another Al-Anon will work for me? That's it. It's really just that simple. We can make a beginning from there. Atheists and agnostics can recover in this program. We're going to move on to step three is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand. So that's step three. So I know when I got to step three, my sponsor was like, hey, DeAna, how well is life working out for you? With you trying to control and manage the alcoholic and all this other stuff in your life, how's that going? And for me, there was a dark cloud over life. I was real micromanaging. I just didn't, it didn't feel like a good place at all. I couldn't stand myself, quite frankly. I was like, I imagine others can't stand me. So, that was a humbling place to get to. And so step 3 is just a decision, to turn our will, which is our thoughts, and our life, which is our actions, over to a power greater than ourselves. Because what we're doing isn't working. We're not going to know how to turn that over at step 3. That's why we work the rest of the steps. Okay? So steps 4 through 12 are actions. So step 4, they start to talk about that on page 62. And it says, I'm going to read step 4. It says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Okay. On page 62, it says, selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. And then it goes on to say, we invariably find that at some point in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later place us in a position to be hurt. So it's saying we ourselves have placed ourselves in a position to be hurt. So it's not about other people, like a lot of us thought when we came in here, pointing fingers, you know. We might have been stuck on ideas that were just some kind of victim, or, you know, and granted, people may have harmed us, but, you know, we ourselves are very focused on self and getting our way. Page 63 and 74, it says, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless it once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor, and in our case, our obsessive thinking, was but a symptom. We had to get down to causes and conditions. Yeah, so again, our obsessive thinking is just the kind of the outer layer of the onion. It's what everybody sees, and we try to manage that in step 1, but our illness is much, much deeper. It's that we don't deal well with life on life's terms. And we get something we get an effect by obsessing and controlling the alcoholic. We don't have to focus on ourselves. We get to feel superior. We get to feel self-righteous. Maybe we do help in some ways, but our motive is usually always selfish. So that's not going to work. And so page 64, it says a business that takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. And so what we're doing in step 4 is we're doing a fact-facing and fact-finding process. Okay? We're going to discover the truth about the stock in trade. Okay? So think about if you had a business, you're not going to want expired, spoiled goods on your shelf because it's not any good. You want to make room for fresh things and things that are going to serve you. Well, that's what it's like with us. As Al-Anon, we hold on to stuff. We are not good at letting things go. We replay, relive, refeel. So in this inventory, we're gonna address 3 areas. We're gonna do an inventory on resentment, fears, and our sex conduct. Okay. So it says in step 4, we're asked to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We're going to do this with the help of a sponsor, and we use the big book, which has the directions. And so we're going to lay out the things about ourselves that we need to address, okay, that are cutting us off from God. When we do the inventory, you know, we're not writing a book. It's a fact-facing, fact-finding process. We keep it brief, like bullet points. Because guess what? We're real good about living out these stories in our mind and playing out like this 4-hour movie about what people did to us. What we're looking at in our inventory is the role that we played, you know, in our resentments and the problems we have in our life. You know, So it says on page 64, resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics, and in our case, Al-Anons, more than anything else. We set them on paper. We list people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves, why were we angry? In most cases, we found that our self-esteem, pocketbooks, ambition, personal relationships, including sex, threatened. So we were sore. We were burned out. So resentments, that's anything we replay, relive, we feel, and it destroys us. Destroys us as Al-Anons, because we squander time, we waste time thinking about things, and there's no room for God when we do that. There's no space. We stay angry and sore at people. We feel like victims. So we start our inventory, listing out our resentments. They give a nice example on page 65 in the big book of a brief, short, sweet, to the point, little snippet of an inventory. You can look at that. Then we go on to the fear. We talk about our fears, and fears are basically we're afraid we're not going to get what we want or lose what we have. So we're going to list what our fears are, why do we have the fear, and such. Because again, these things are driving us into our obsessive thinking. And then the last part of our inventory is sex, or sex harm. How have we used our sex powers selfishly to get our own way? It doesn't have to be specific to sex. It could be, flirting or, leading people on. It doesn't have to be a sex act, but it certainly can be. But it's all about our motives and how it's about relationships, how we've shown up selfishly. So we're going to list that out, and we're going to share this with a sponsor, and that gets us into step 5. And step 5 is that I'm going to read that here. It says, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrong. And you'll find more about step 5, also pages 72 to 75. And so we're going to share this with a sponsor. They've been through this. We don't need to worry about them judging us. They're going to help us see where our mistakes are, because we're not good at seeing that. And we're going to come out of step 5 understanding more about what our grosser handicaps are, what our defects are. Okay. So that's why we need a sponsor. We need somebody objective, somebody that's recovered, and they can help us, see things in a different light. This is a humbling step. So some people, and it's understandable. It may be scary to do it with somebody new, but again, how desperate are you? How are you wanting to get well? It's something that we need to do, if we want to get well. And people have tried. They tell in the big book, people have tried to keep it to themselves or just share it with God, and you're just not going to get recovered if you do that. Okay. Also in step 5, it says, page 75, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. So, we're going to take an hour or so, and, we're going to, do what it says. We're going to carefully review the first 5 steps, basically go over what we've talked about with our sponsor, and ask, have we left anything out? Did we miss anything? And that really is, have we intentionally left anything out? So we're going to, because, we want to be thorough, and it talks about, this is a cornerstone of our program. We're building on a foundation. And then step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And then they talk more about step 6 on page 76. And, there's a prayer in there. And, it's basically, a prayer to help us, ask God to let go of these things, these resentments or defects and such. Because, we may not, there may be some things that we don't want to let go of, but we ask God to help us. And there's a prayer there. And, we're absolutely welcome to hang on to resentments and all that kind of stuff and anger, but we're just not going to get recovered if we do that. So we have to be willing to ask God to help us let go of these. Okay. So that's basically steps 1 through 6. And next week we'll go through steps 7, 8, and 9. And we're going to move into our closing here. So, 7th tradition, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This group does not have a payment structure in place and currently requires no overhead expenses. If you would like to fulfill Tradition 7, please direct contributions directly to the Al-Anon World Service Office by visiting alanon.org. For questions about this meeting or if you're looking for a sponsor, please send emails to alanonbigbookrecovery@gmail.com. Recordings can be accessed on YouTube by searching @Al-Anon Step Speaker in the YouTube search box. If you're interested in other Al-Anon meetings that follow the Big Book, please visit www.alanonbigbookssolutiongroup.org. Reading from the Big Book, page 164, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. Answers will come if your own house is in order. But you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy death. May God bless you and keep you until then. Now let's have a moment of silence for the Al-Anon who still suffers, followed by the Lord's Prayer or a prayer of your own choosing said in silence. Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.